This is Brunch at 107. I am Rennie Bishop. My co-host is
Sharmain, Baboolal. Good morning.
And it's good to have you here with us. We've got a tight plate lined up for you this morning and a lot of good stuff. Trust that you have the time to spend with us and you enjoy what we attempt to bring to you this morning. Sharmain?
Well, first, Margaret Rose we'll tell you, she's passionate about the right things when it comes to the politics of Trinidad and Tobago. She has 19 years experience as an attorney. She's now US-based. And if you remember her name, she first came to light when she was a person who was persistent on the issue of procurement. And while most people have bandied about the phrase campaign finance reform, she is the one who's taken it to another level. Actually, she takes it even beyond that and has set up Disclosure Today, an online campaign which we will hear about in a bit, because Margaret is on the line from London. More importantly, with allegations flying left, right and centre that Jack Warner has funded the UNC, and now the UNC is asking whether his son Darian funded the PNM to any extent. And in light of news which broke this morning that how Jack Warner spent, and BBC exclusive, how he spent his 10 million bribe, the alleged bribe that he received from South Africa, which implicates JTA supermarket in Trinidad and Tobago, which took 4.8 million of those funds. We have on the line here Margaret Rose from London, and she is going to speak with us.
Miss Rose, good morning to you.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm all right. It seems we got cut off a while back.
On a number of occasions. Well, as it stands now, the Representation of the People's Act, Chapter 201, which you have put out there, is a state...
One minute, Sean, before we start. I heard a little trail end of my introduction. I am now 20 years at the bar, just correcting that.
19,
and I'm
sorry,
UK-based,
yes.
Not US-based.
Oh, sorry, UK-based.
Yeah, that's all right, yeah.
Okay, well, recently a statement of the Representation of the People's Act, Chapter 201, says a statement of all monies, securities, and equivalent of money received by the election agent from the candidate or any other person for the purposes of election expenses incurred or to be incurred with a statement of the name of every person from whom they are received is supposed to be available. Is this happening? What's happening with this? Where are we now with this?
Well, a couple of things we should point out in respect of the Representation of the People's Act. It doesn't cover political parties at all. So all of the spending that you would see political parties doing, the major spending on cottage meetings and public meetings, that's not covered by the Representation of the People's Act. It is only referring to candidate expenditure. That's the first thing. Secondly, there are limits in respect of how much a candidate can spend, up to $50,000 on the election expenses. But the problem there as well is that election expenses, as defined, is very narrowly drawn. So that election expenses is defined as expenses related to the conduct and the management of the election. So in other words, everything that's going on right now is not really covered, not specifically and expressly covered by the ROPA. Yeah, and so we have a situation where the act is easily avoided by candidates. It's not even necessarily a breach because the definition of election expenses is so narrowly drawn. You understand? So that we know that the electoral reality is that candidates appear, when we look at the spending that's going on at public meetings, what they're giving out and that sort of thing, it appears to be more than 50,000 TT. But it may be that they are not breaching the law by doing so because of the manner in which the section defines election expenses. As far as I understand, candidates are making their disclosures after the election within the 45-day period, as ROPA, stipulates.
Is there, good morning, thank you so much for joining us, Ms. Rose. Is there, the question of after the election, the disclosures are made, is there anything, two areas. One is to make clear for our listeners, what's the individual maximum contribution, what is that of the corporation, and if there are political action committees that make representation, that make contributions. If you can make that clear for our listeners, please, and for yours truly.
Well, we don't have political action committees per se here, but there are maximum donations that the candidate himself can commit to the campaign, which would be 5,000 TT. But in terms of how much you can spend, the limit is 50,000 TT.
This is for the individual and the maximum contributions companies can make.
That is not specifically addressed.
Therein lies the problem, Sharmain.
In that context. But you see, the thing is, what we should be, well, it is good to start with where the law is, but, you know, we need to take this discourse to another level. Because, yes, the law is there, and the issue may be that candidates and political parties will say we are not infringing the law, so we don't need to tell you A, B, and C, how much we are who is giving us our funding, how much funding we are receiving. But at the end of the day, the importance of this issue is that who pays the piper holds the tune. This is the system, the world that we've created, not only in Trinidad and Tobago. We've created a system across representative democracies that elections are very expensive because of the way we approach it. And so political parties want to get funding so that they can buy your vote. And so it's a very expensive process. They want to get that money in. And corporations who decide that they are going to fund the political parties, the question we need to ask is, why are they funding these political parties? Why are millions of dollars being spent? You see, it is when we look at the issue from a holistic perspective, we just went through 10 years of public procurement reform agitation, and we were happy to get the act passed, and we're still waiting. There's a lot more to be done in terms of regulation. But as I keep saying, that deals with one part, or addressing one part of the corruption cycle. Okay? Because it is that when we're dealing with the tail end there, the award of contracts, we need to ask ourselves, why is it politicians may want to be making decisions and public officials making decisions to award contracts in an appropriate way to a particular firm? And there are linkages anecdotally between those who finance companies and then who you see at the other end of the cycle receiving the contracts and whatnot. So if we don't regulate and put greater regulation, more restrictive regulation at the top end here, at the beginning of it, you know, we come difficulties if we are trying to deal with one.
One of the questions...
So,
sorry, go ahead. Are you sure? One of the questions... Sorry. One of the questions that you yourself have posed is that what kind of system we can design, develop, and implement, which will not be asking us similar questions 5 years from now. And I'm sure you have that in your mind. But before we just jump ahead to that, another issue that I've seen you brought up in one of your posts on Facebook was that all these allegations, and this is what has brought us here to you, the allegations about Jack Bonner spending money in an elections, and him saying that FIFA money was spent in the 2010 elections, right? You're asking, is any authority initiating an investigation on this issue? But which authority can initiate an investigation on this issue?
Well, the police can certainly initiate an investigation on this issue. The DVP can instruct the police. The Integrity in Public Life, the Integrity Commission. There are institutions. We have the institutional framework. If it is, but you know, let's not quote posts without, you know, the appropriate context. Because when I said that, in terms of investigation, I'm not talking about willy-nilly all of the police. I'm talking about specifically the issue where the Prime Minister is reported to have said that if those checks were made out or something that he said, if money was given by Jack Warner, it would have been for his own campaign. Now, events have overtaken that statement, but she had said that, and in that context, I'm saying, but if this is so, if this allegation is true, is this not a breach of the Representation of the People Act? On behalf of Jack Warner as a candidate, would he not have spent more than the 50,000 TT? And there's an issue there that should be investigated. So it was only on that slim issue I was speaking about the investigation. We have investigations underway by the U.S., and they have been far more successful than we have been in Trinidad and Tobago in these kinds of investigations. We have no one convicted in Trinidad and Tobago on any serious crime, serious fraud issue yet. And so we have the U.S. undertaking these investigations, and they will be looking to trace the criminal proceeds. They will be looking to see whether any other parties in Trinidad and Tobago were laundering alleged illicit funds. And so I am happy, and I think we should wait to see where these investigations lead. Right, and so I think the evidence will come out on that issue as we go forward, as we see it unraveling every single day, and it's becoming more and more scandalous. But I think it's a really a great opportunity for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. You know, people say I'm perennially optimistic, and maybe I am, but you know, we see this as a shame and scandal on us, and you know, I agree it is. But I see it as a tremendous opportunity as this thing is unraveling in front of us, as this issue is now being placed on the forefront of our national consciousness, where the man on the street every day is reading the papers, they're seeing these issues, to raise the level of discourse so that they can now start to appreciate, you know, the importance of integrity in political finance, because those payments to the political parties may tend to compromise your elected officials when they are in office.
Attorney.
And sorry, yes?
I'm sorry, it's about just remind our listeners the voice you're hearing is that of Attorney Margaret Rose. She's with us from the UK. We're talking about manipulation of the political environment through campaign fields. I'm trying to merge two things together that we have covered this morning, and one has to do with how do we track the contributors and how do we track the contracts they derive from their contributions, which is to say the contract happens after the party's been elected. But unless you've got a transparent way of tracing contributor and contract awardees, you're going to have a problem, you know, following the line. Do we have any transparent system, or would you suggest a transparent system that would allow folks like yourself who are in this business, specifically an attorney like yourself, and or the general public, to track what happens between contribution, the size of the contribution, and the benefits?
Yeah, and that is exactly the issue. We don't have it. We don't have the law mandating the reporting and disclosure by political parties of donations received in cash or in kind, and the amount of money that is being expended. And that is the foundation of any political finance campaign reform regulation that we have to be looking at. The foundation is a system that mandates reporting of the donations, cash and in kind, and disclosure in a timely manner of these things. And when that is done, when allegations are made in the context of a procurement exercise and issues are flagged that there's something odd in respect of this award, then you can link and cross-reference those who received the contracts with those who gave the funding. This would not be evidence beyond a reasonable doubt of a linkage, but it certainly would contribute with other pieces of evidence as circumstantial evidence. And that's where it will come in the context of building a case of collusion, bid rigging, and fraud. These elements would be taken into consideration at that stage. Now, if we're looking at political finance regulation, transparency is the first stage. But there's a lot more. This is a fairly complex issue, okay? Because one of the questions we need to be asking in the people in Trinidad and Tobago is, I mean, do we need to be spending this amount of money on election campaigning? Do we really need to spend, millions of dollars? And these are the estimates that are out there, the kinds of tens of millions of dollars on election campaigns that we've been spending, when there are so many other more pressing needs in our society, in our healthcare, when you're looking at crime and the youth and that sort of thing. So we need to look as well at a possibly, and I have my views, but I'm not trying to, and I will not, and my organization, Disclosure Today, will not be trying to, promote that this is how the reform ought to be, okay? But certainly we need to be looking at to what extent we will prescribe and limit election campaigning funding. We need to be looking at whether we are going to prescribe from whom parties can receive funding. So for example, some countries like the U.S. have prescribed that foreign persons and corporate entities cannot make election campaign finance contributions. We need to look at whether state organizations should be contributing to political parties, whether we want to prescribe that. And then we also need to look at another model, which is the state-funded model, which many countries, including the UK, Canada, many countries have adopted, where once a party, manifests certain criteria and qualifies under certain predetermined criteria, they can receive state funding in the form of grants to political parties and reimbursements to the candidates for election expenses. You see, that kind of discussion and discourse is the kind of discourse we need to take, not just rubber stamping what other countries have been doing, but looking and critically examining all of the models, looking at our historical context. How have we been spending over the last few elections? What have we been spending it on? Which constituencies have we been spending it on? Why have we been spending it? And what has been the net result of that? But what the platform is, it's about creating we call it a social governance network. And we call it that because we are trying to leverage technology that brings people together. We're trying to leverage a technology that brings people together and drives transparency to create real social and civic change in Trinidad and Tobago. And Trinidad and Tobago is where we are launching it first, but we already have partners in the UK, in Portugal, discussing partnerships in Jamaica and Grenada, and it is to be expanded and scaled globally. But what the network is seeking to do is to empower citizen activists in Trinidad and Tobago. We would love to inspire more people to become activists, but we are also there to support existing citizen activists who have a passion for a particular area. And we are saying the foundation of any effective citizen engagement initiative with public issues is transparency. That's the starting point. We are talking about participatory governance, and you cannot engage effectively with the public bodies and public officials unless you know what the public bodies and public officials are doing, unless you know the information that provides the context for whatever issue you are raising with them. Secondly, we cannot hold any of our public bodies and public officials to account unless we know. So that's why we start with our premise of disclosure today, transparency on demand, because that is the axiom upon which we will build our democracy. And so, one, we allow these citizen activists to come on and request information from public authorities to issue legally compliant digital freedom of information requests, which will start the ball rolling in respect of that act. And we believe that that act, the Freedom of Information Act that we have in Trinidad and Tobago, is so underutilized. It is such a comparatively powerful act compared to other pieces of legislation that we have in Trinidad and Tobago. And we have to thank Ramesh Lawrence Maraj for that, when he passed that when he was Attorney General. But it's such an underutilized act and so powerful. So we are helping people to make that right from the comfort of their homes or their offices a legally compliant request for information. And if you are refused, that's when the lawyers kick in. And we have a team, and we are continuing to expand our team of pro bono lawyers who will be, once we are of the view that your request for information has merit. All right, so we are not saying that every request for information which has been refused, we are going to be taking to court. Not at all. Once the legal team looks at it and thinks that this issue has merit and the citizen wants to go forward with it, we will go forward with it at no cost on behalf of the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. Secondly, the citizens have the opportunity to propose solutions to their members of parliament, to public bodies for any issues that they see taking place in their community where they feel that they have an idea. They feel, I know what I can do to make this place better. You see, we've put that in there to encourage citizens to take more ownership, more responsibility, more leadership for what's going wrong in society, because we have a culture where we keep looking to the government to do everything for us. And so we really want to stimulate that sort of civic entrepreneurialism where persons will see issues in their community and say, you know what, I have an idea, I want to do it. And so we provide support. We also have an incubator to provide support for your ideas, and also the ability to create social media campaigns. So you can have your solution, send it to your member of parliament, and then create a social media campaign where others are able to come and join your solution and rate your solution and say, yes, we think this is great for that community. Let's have a transparent way of doing it. Because, again, this is another issue. We are trying to deal with this from a public contracting standpoint.
Yes.
We have... Sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry that we are just actually running out of time, and time is of the essence. And
we about disclosure today, so you know.
Yeah, no.
Ask me, I will talk.
Yes, and we've got a grasp of what it is, just for now. But please stay with us, not just today, but stay in tune with us, because we're gonna ask you to return, because we're gonna give you some time, and then we're gonna follow up on where Disclosure Today has actually impacted on citizens of Trinidad and Tobago.
We're hoping to have an impact, and we'll see how it goes. And we need the citizens to help us, so that if anyone is interested in volunteering and joining our effort, please send an email to info@disclosure.today. That's it, info@disclosure.today. And let's see how we can make a difference.
Attorney Margaret Roach, thank you so much. You have yourself a wonderful Sunday. Thank you for joining us inside Brunch.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.